Whew. You shake your head. Where are you? Oh, right. Just about to finish up the prototype. You fiddle with the display. The device is so intricate that you had to buy another screwdriver, specialized, just to twist the screws. Just another one for the collection, you think, as you tighten the final seam. The completed headset sits in front of you on the desk. Its diagnostics flashing on your monitor. Something feels very familiar about all of this. Maybe it's because you've been through this before with previous versions of the project. Who knows? You've certainly been at it long enough. The home lab is good enough for what you need. It doesn't compare to the university's facility, but after the mishap with the Neurolab's test rats, you aren't allowed back inside the building unless you want to deal with the police. Of course, you can still operate just fine in your garage, but it isn't ideal. Fortunately, your old lab partner took your side, so you aren't completely cut off. The frames snap into place and you inspect your work. At first glance, the device looks like a pair of glasses from a high school film project. Square frames with various wires and bits of metal poking out. 2 external power supplies which clip to your belt. Velcro straps extend from the temples like tentacles. It's not pretty, but appearances are something for the marketing team to worry about before it goes to mass production. You set the screwdriver down and pick up the headset. It's a little heavy, which makes sense considering the odds and ends bolted onto its framework. Your last prototype had enough wires poking out of it that it was like wearing a visor made of steel wool. The scabs it left are still behind your ears. This iteration is far more self-contained. Cable management was a skill you taught yourself when you built your first PC, and it seemed like it would come in handy to make sure the glasses weren't too messy. A few community college classes on introductory electrical engineering taught you how to hook up the circuits as needed. You turn the glasses over in your hand, and you aren't really sure what you expected. It doesn't snap onto your face. It doesn't come alive and drill a wire into your brain. It just sits there. You admonish yourself for being silly and boot up the program on your terminal. One downside to getting ejected from a university lab is a lack of sterile test environment, but your apartment should do good enough for what this headset is designed to do. You take a second to consider what you're doing and then lower it over your face. The headset rests heavy on the bridge of your nose and the metal is cool against your cheeks. You fasten the Velcro behind your head. It's still a little front heavy, but after tightening the straps it settles more comfortably. The electrode's rubber is cool against your temple. You clip the power supply units to your belt and you take a deep breath before you flip the switch. In the right lighting, the batteries resemble larger than average fanny packs. Not exactly a fashion statement, but they fit with the retro futuristic appearance of the headset itself. The glasses thrum against your face as diagnostics scroll down the screen on your terminal. Things seem steady, though the cooling fan on the power supply whirs into overdrive. The hardware supplier promised they wouldn't explode if overloaded, and you took her word that you weren't strapping grenades to your hip. Though small, the amount of power needed to operate these glasses was prodigious. It was something to streamline in the future model, but right now it was simply enough to make sure the things worked at all. Engaging neuromechanical interface, reads the bottom line of the diagnostic scroll. The electrodes on your temple heats up as your vision fuzzes slightly and the dizziness washes over your mind. But then the moment passes. Your sight sharpens again and the display flashes a green check mark in the bottom right corner. Okay, initial startup works, you think. Time to actually test its functionality. For as long as you can remember, you've always had trouble deciding which course of action was the most important at any given time. It first manifested when you were a child, a scrawny little thing, perpetually underweight compared to the other kids your age. Incredibly bright, as every adult teacher put it, after even a moment. Observing you at work, but unable or unwilling to prioritize what you needed most. What initially seemed like a lack of appetite was soon identified as an unwillingness to admit you needed to do something else besides work on whatever project you set your mind to. In human development terms, the ability to plan, focus, and execute multiple tasks is referred to as executive function. It's what allows people to prioritize tasks without distraction or impulse derailing their progress. And it's what lets people interrupt their ongoing projects if they realize they need something else. You never lacked executive function per se, but it was never something which came naturally to you. When you set your mind on a goal, you pursued that goal to its completion at the expense of everything else. For a while, You were proud of this single-minded devotion to your plans, despite the hungry nights spent in the lab, or the lonely nights spent in the lab, or the rushed bathroom runs when you realized you spent the entire day in the lab with no breaks. Your output was extraordinary, and certainly well worth the effort. When Charlie left, though, it definitely highlighted some shortcomings with your methods. It was the first time your inability to recognize what you truly needed to prioritize caused any trouble, and so you decided to get to work on it. APPEAL was the name of a project, APP.eal, an artifact from a previous iteration which would highlight environmental objects you desired. Of course, your science wasn't exactly enough to filter through the blunt urging of the id, and the concept was shelved after some uncomfortable initial testing. This was a third iteration of APPEAL, one which utilized a far more nuanced program to filter through the white noise of the human brain, identify what the body or mind needed, and highlight the shortest path through the local environment to fulfill that need. A robust artificial intelligence parsed the visual inputs from the camera and displayed the path on the lenses. Simply put, the glasses tell you what you need and where to get it. The only indication the glasses are on is a small flashing exclamation point in the bottom right-hand corner of your field of vision. You focus your thoughts on the alert and the message, "Calibration needed," flashes up on the display. Would you like to calibrate APPEAL? You sharpen your thoughts on the word yes, and the menu disappears. A loading bar fills from left to right and then disappears also. The display goes dead. The power supply fans at your belt go silent. You sit for a moment, taken by surprise. This should have worked. What went wrong? You go to remove the glasses when suddenly the power fans start up again, and green wireframe outlines the surface in your garage lab, identifying, the heads-up display says. And the green wireframe fades to leave an arrow on the ground. Wait, you think. It's clearly directing you towards something you need, or something you want, but it hasn't identified what that thing is. An obvious shortcoming in hindsight, you think, but something to be addressed after this test? You stand from your chair curious, and the arrow in the ground pointed to the alleyway between your place and the neighbor's. You disconnect the headset from your desktop terminal and the display fizzles briefly as it swaps to local processors. The power indicator says you have a good 4 hours before it needs to get plugged in. Perfect for a field test. Your lab door leads to the pathway which connects your garage side door to your driveway. Your 2014 blue Subaru Impreza is parked there, and the arrow leads you up to its driver's side door. Where is it taking me? You think as you get into the vehicle and key the ignition. The lens displays shift from an arrow to a GPS screen of the local area, and the directions of the map are a familiar route you normally take when you go on your hikes. Maybe APPEAL was telling you needed to get out and have some fresh air. The weather recently was not very hospitable to outdoor activities, and though you've enjoyed your time in the lab, it was important to get out and about in nature sometimes. You reverse out of the driveway and follow the directions on the glasses lenses. I guess we're going on a field test, you say to no one in particular. A normal occurrence for you, now that you live alone. You consider the glasses, and a shiver goes down your spine. You hadn't expected the onboard artificial intelligence to have such a fidelity as to schedule its own field test. It's obvious now that's what you sought out to do, but to have the program sharpen to its focus so quickly catches the breath in your chest. You do your best not to drive distractedly, but the magnitude of the potential applications for a technology like this. If this tech has truly parsed out your desire for a test run and scheduled one itself, it was already a rousing success. Now you just need to see what it thought was an appropriate test. The GPS directions lead you to your favorite trailhead, a 2-mile out and back path up into the foothills outside of town. It's a beautiful sunny day, comfortable with long sleeves, and just bright enough that APPEAL's lenses kept you from squinting too tight. The headset's arrow leads up the trail into the trees. You realize that you're ill-prepared for a hike and consider going back to your home for at least a water bottle, when the arrow on the ground shifts and loops, twisting back towards the trunk of your car. You frown and follow it and open your trunk. The lens projects a green wireframe over the contents of your vehicle and highlights an unopened plastic bottle you now remember leaving after a failed attempt at attending a pickup soccer game last week. Rapid response and adaptation to changing needs, you say under your breath as you retrieve the water bottle and shut the trunk. You remind yourself to review the code when you get back to the lab. This is far more than you'd ever expect from what is essentially a Frankenstein's monster of spaghetti code pieced together from multiple different sources. The arrow on the ground once more goes up the trail and you follow it. It's a gorgeous day, but your mind is preoccupied with the hardware on your face. If these first results are conclusive, then you've stumbled upon something which could dramatically affect human productivity in the workspace, or safety operations, or even recreation. You stop to pick up a stone from the trail. One of the trees nearby is laden with pine cones, and you eye one about halfway up the trunk. All right, we're going to knock that one out of the tree, you say out loud. You aren't sure if the glasses gain any benefit in calculation or interpretation from the microphone input, but you've included a microphone, so it bore testing. The arrow in the trail disappears and a halo appears just at the end of your arm's reach. As you wind back to make your throw, the halo shifts slightly, but always just where you would release a stone were you to throw it. You lean back, aim, and throw the stone carefully to let loose just as your hand passes through the spot displayed on the lens. The rock sails through the air and strikes the pine cone square center. Oh man, you say. Real-time adjustments and display for velocity, angle, and projectile weight. Your hand starts shaking slightly. Even the military doesn't have anything quite like this, at least not openly available. And you've built this in your garage. The potential applications... You continue your walk along the headset's arrow, but the possibilities occupy your attention. If this tech could be expanded upon, it could revolutionize life as you know it. AI-assisted disaster relief efforts could identify where to best allocate resources almost before the disaster arrived. Architecture and infrastructure could be optimized with minimal effort. Attach this tech to robotic servitors, and the country could have an automated squad of predictive drones capable of quarterbacking much of society's busy work. You are so consumed in your thoughts that you don't hear the dry, husky rattle until it's too late. The headset display flashes a warning, but it doesn't identify what until you feel the snake's fangs sink into your ankle. You shout as it feels like the veins inside your leg catch on fire and you collapse. The snake disappears into a nearby underbrush, and you just catch a glimpse of the diamond grid pattern along its back. Oh, you say as you feel the sight of the wound going numb. You rack your brain to try to remember if you knew anything about treating snake bites. The old school recommendation was to suck the venom out, but you couldn't remember if that was debunked by the internet or not. And it would have been an awkward angle anyway. The headset beeps and catches your attention. The arrow flashes to extend off trail, in the opposite direction of the snake, down the hillside. The green wire frame overlay appears and highlights a distant patch of plant life standing out against the arid mountain grass. The directions on the screen read, Obtain Acaranthus aspera. You check your cell phone. You have 2 bars up here on the trail, most likely enough to make an emergency call out. But who knows how long it'll take to get an ambulance and EMT team up here. What do you do? While field testing your new predictive heads-up display, you were bitten by a rattlesnake. Rather than call an ambulance, you followed APPeal's AI to a cluster of plants in the hopes they will slow the venom. You pause for a moment before you go crashing through the underbrush. Your forehead is sweaty, from the sun, from the stress, or from the venom, you aren't sure. You've never been bitten by a snake, let alone a rattlesnake, and you don't know off the top of your head how long the venom takes to spread. It's probably less time than it would take for an ambulance to arrive, and so far this tech has proven itself far more sophisticated than you've expected. You aren't sure what exactly Acaranthus aspera is, but if the tech tells you it'll help, you believe it. You can call for an ambulance afterwards. The plant resembles wheat, but the top flowers are turning a pale shade of lilac. You start pulling the stalks whole from the ground until you have a good handful. Well, what do I do now? You ask the headset. Obtain is what it had said. Now all it's doing is highlighting the plants. Your legs have gone numb around where the snake bit you, but lines of fire still inch up your calf. Your ankle has started to itch fiercely, and the heads-up display is frustratingly blank. You pull out your phone and bring up a web search. Acaranthus aspera, you type, copying the words on the heads-up display. It takes longer than normal for your connection ping to return results, but after a minute or so, you see a whole page of facts about this plant. You wipe sweat from your eyes. Your vision has started to blur around the edges. Aqueous extracts, says one of the search results, but you're having trouble making out the words. Extracts? But for venoms? Should you apply them to the wound or ingest them? Would ingesting them activate it soon enough to counteract the venom? What do you do? After suffering a bite from a rattlesnake on a field test, the predictive AI in your program led you to a cluster of plants to save your life. Unsure of what to do, you've decided to apply the plants to your wound as a salve. You sit on a nearby log, slump against it, as the venom quickens in your blood, and begin to strip the plants of their buds. You roll the plant fibers and buds between your hands. You remove your water bottle from your bag and add some to your cupped palm and mash it together until it turns into a paste. Your shaky hand slathers the paste onto the snake bite. The wounds turn red and started to swell, and it's hot to the touch. You bite your lip in agony. Your vision flickers, and the shadows change. You must have blacked out for at least a few minutes. Your breath is ragged, and it feels like your mouth is full of dust. Something is blinking on the heads-up display. Call ambulance, with an arrow pointing towards your phone. It must have slipped from your hand onto the ground. You reach out, but your hands are clumsy, and you push the phone further into the dirt. You stretch, and it feels like the thing is at the end of a fading, blurry tunnel. Your numbing fingers curl around its beveled edges, and you try to unlock its screen. Eventually, your fingertips trace the right pattern, and you navigate, slowly, to the phone icon. Your entire existence is shrouded in fog. It's like you're moving half blind. Then, a moment of clarity. You look at where the sun sits in the sky. It's been a long time since you were bit. Even if you called an ambulance, it probably wouldn't reach you in time. Why bother? Your fingers hover over the numpad. Then you decide who to call. Her number's still in your phone. You never actually erased it. Just wiped the most recent messages so her name wouldn't keep popping up at inconvenient times. You're not even sure if Charlie will answer, but her voice picks up nevertheless.
What is it, Mark?
For a moment, the sound of her voice brushes out the cobwebs, and it's like you're back at before. Then the fog starts creeping back in, and you try to speak, but your tongue is thick in your mouth.
I swear to God, if this is another pocket tile,
It sounds like she's about to hang up. No! The word is half jumbled, but it rings out anyway. Charlie, wait! A pause, and then...
Mark? Are you okay? You sound like you've been drinking.
No. You take a moment to push through the haze. Charlie, wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. A longer pause this time. You start to lose your patience, and then...
Mark, listen, you can't keep calling me when you're like this. If you need someone to help...
I'm not drunk, you say, though the words slur. No, there was an accident, and I don't think I'm gonna be okay.
What? An accident? Mark, what are you talking about? Are you okay?
Probably not. You shake your head emphatically. A snake bit me. Kinda loopy, pretty numb, but I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything.
Mark, wait, a snake bite? Where are you?
I'm Burning Mesa, you say. I was testing my classes. It didn't go too well. You laugh, but it's probably not funny.
Did you call an ambulance? Are you by yourself?
It's probably too late to call an ambulance. It's getting harder to breathe. I think... There's a rustling in the brush nearby. Had someone heard you and come to investigate? Wait, there's someone here! Then there's a chuffing noise, and the sound of something huge moving in the bushes. You catch glimpses of a shaggy, brown form through the leaves.
Mark? Mark, are you there?
You realize you've fallen, the venom stealing your ability to maintain your balance. Charlie's voice sounds tinny from nearby.
Mark, I'm calling for help. Just hang on.
You roll over on your back, and the bear's tooth-filled jaws fills your vision. You've been eaten by a bear. The end.
Hey, thanks for listening. You've just completed a run-through of Create Your Own Podventure, APP.eal, an audio drama written and produced by some nobodies at Grimwise Studios in Boulder County, Colorado. CYOP APP.eal was edited by Zach Wiseman, written by Dylan Terry, and directed by Zach Wiseman and Dylan Terry. The original score for APP.eal was composed by Jared Allen Gleason. CYOP APP.eal stars Zach Wiseman, Suzanne Grimmer, Harrison Webb, Kayla Four, and Michael Colby, with other voices provided by Dylan Terry. Think you might have missed some of them? Go back, you can find their characters along a different story path. The story for CYOP APP.eal was first developed by Zach and Dylan on episode 7 of Talking Upstream, a weekly show hosted by some nobodies on the Pod TV and Scene Snobs networks. You can keep up with Some Nobodies by visiting www.somenobodies.com, and if you want to help support them, visit patreon.com/somenobodies. If you do, you can add your name to the following list of supporters: Scott Curtis, Sarah Tkachuk, Tanya Sheck, and the Listener Podcast app, with a very special thanks to Jim Eade of the Eade Foundation. Please give CYOP APP.eal 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform, and visit facebook.com/CYOPod to show us which endings you discovered. To find the rest of the Some Nobodies family of podcasts, you can search for Silicon Angels, the Podcast, a podcast show, Talking Upstream, Twitching Upstream, or you can catch Zach and Dylan on The Real Boys on your chosen platform. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.